Hey everybody, it's Emily, the Crazy Worm Lady. As you can see, this side of my guest bedroom has completely been taken over by worms. However, I did receive a VermiBag from Tom Perkins, and I wanted to set that up and get that running today. I thought it'd be fun to do side by side in comparison to the Urban Worm Bag. It looks like it's a hair taller, and it's definitely narrower. So I had to put together a PVC pipe stand. There were directions on how to do that, and I had to get some help from my father to help me to cut the PVC to size. And I was going to paint it, but just haven't had good weather lately, so I'm just going to leave it white for now. Maybe after my first harvest, I will end up painting this stand. So I am going to get the pieces together, and we will put this together and get some worms in it. Okay guys, so I set this up with my lighting and everything. It wasn't completely feasible to do this one-handed on camera for you, but these corner pieces, these pieces are separate from this here. So you just feed this onto the pipe through this loop here and then back onto the other piece of pipe, and it fits nice and taut between all of the corners here, and it's a nice snug fit. I think it'll work well, and I actually almost feel like these pieces here, since they're pulling it together, will help hold the stand together and prevent any sort of bowing. But I am interested to see if, when this bag is full, if the weight puts any strain or frays these pieces here. It reminds me a bit of like a backpack type material that you'd have, but we will see what happens with that. So another feature of this bag, this is the VermiBag Mini, I believe, but it comes with this little window that velcros shut, and it's just this clear plastic. But I like this because it seems like you can feed right in front of this window and watch or peek in on your worms at work in there. There's another gentleman running one of these bags who just set one up in the classroom at his son's school, and I think kids would really get a lot out of that, and they can learn a lot about composting by watching these worms work. So this is just a regular zipper down here, and this is a feature that's very different than the Urban Worm Bag. So I'm going to unzip this here because there's a inner and an outer piece here. So this piece here, when you zip it shut, prevents the castings from actually ever touching the zipper, which I think will be interesting because the Urban Worm Bag, the zipper's holding up, but I do think that over time it will require a little bit more maintenance to keep the zipper area clear, and this feature I think is pretty smart. So I'm going to zip this shut, and I was going to harvest a few trays out of my worm factory, and I was just thinking about it, and I'm going to start this bin very similarly to the way I started my Urban Worm Bag, which is that I'm going to actually use 2 of my trays that I was going to harvest from the worm factory and make that a base for the VermiBag. That way it'll have some finished compost, a lot of the microbial activity, and it already will have a good number of worms to get us started. So I'm playing musical chairs with my lights, but these are actually 2 trays, these top 2 trays, on top of my feeding tray in my worm factory that are pretty much done decomposing. I mean, they have a little bit of material here and there, but not a whole lot. And there are worms and cocoons all throughout. You can see there's a healthy number of springtails as well. But I'm going to take these 2 bins, and I'm going to, or trays I guess, and add them to the VermiBag, and we will get started from there. Okay, so before I add the worm trays, I just want to show you what the inside of this bag looked like. If we get down on the bottom here, you can see this is like that protective layer there that you want to be collapsed down to protect your zipper from being exposed to the worm castings. So I pressed that down in here, and this material is similar to the Urban Worm Bag, but to me it definitely feels thinner and more breathable. So I'm interested to see if these castings get dry. So it's just going to be, you know, a whole experiment to see what aspects I like of each of my systems that I have running right now. There is a seam down here as well where this thicker plastic connects up here, but it looks like it's double stitched. I think that should probably hold up okay. And then the mesh lid here, just wanted to show you, it's much thinner, it's permeable to the air, and like you can see my fingers and all through it. It's, you know, definitely going to keep the light out, but it's thinner and more breathable than the Urban Worm Bag. So let's add these 2 trays and then we will feed this bin. Okay, so those 2 trays, I just poured the contents down in here, and a few worms got stuck along these seams, but they'll find their way in. And I did grab a handful of worms from my feeding tray as well to make sure we were starting with a decent number. But I definitely think this will be plenty of worms to get started. You know, as we know, the red wigglers reproduce so quickly. So this is the handful I took out of the feeding tray, and there were probably a couple hundred in the other 2 trays as well. So this compost is relatively moist. I don't think I have to add any moisture at all, and the contents of these almost filled us up to this first little seam here. So I'm going to lay down a little bit of shredded paper and cardboard, and then add a little bit of a feeding to this. So I added in some shredded paper and cardboard, just a thin layer, and then I have a few toilet paper and paper towel rolls that I'm literally just going to add in here, whole and dry as well. And as the bin matures and it dampens down, I can kind of rip it as I go, but that'll also add a little bit of extra living environment for the worms. They like to crawl through things, and cardboard is always one of their favorites. So now that that is all added, I have a bag here with some coffee grounds and some bell pepper, looks like some celery as well, just some stuff I had around the kitchen that was not frozen. So sometimes these things take a little bit longer to decompose, as we know, but I am going to add that. And then I also have the remnants of a bag of blueberries that were frozen, and I think they were in my freezer for, sorry about that guys. So yeah, I think this was in my freezer for like over a year, because I completely forgot about it and it was in the back of the freezer. So I just figured I would throw these in as well. I didn't think they would be fresh enough to use anymore. So get this berry off here. So that's a very healthy feeding, especially not knowing exactly how many worms we have in here. So we'll have to see next week if we will have to feed, but I definitely don't want to push this bin too quickly. So if there's still a lot of food in here, then we won't feed again next week. So I'm going to sprinkle some eggshell in here and top it off with a little bit more bedding. Okay, so I drizzled just a hair of water in here because I decided I'm going to use some coconut coir that I had around as my topper, and it's really completely dry. So put that in here. That should absorb the moisture from the food. It thoroughly helps it to remain covered for the worms and to deter any sort of pests from making their way in here. I can't wait to get up to a level where we can feed in front of the window here. But I'm just going to leave this the way it is. I'm not going to add any more moisture. I want to be careful because you know, even with the urban worm bag, there was some seepage from the bottom when I fed too much water-rich foods. So I need to be careful about maintaining the moisture until I learn how this bin works. So I'm really excited to compare these two bins. So far, I would say the positives of this bin is it is a sturdy base. Negative being that you have to build it yourself, and if you don't have a lot of tools around, that might not be quite as easy. I really like the fact that it has the window. I think that will be neat, and the zipper protector, I'm interested to see how that works. So we will just have to see how it goes. You know, a lot of times you think things are good or bad or whatever, and until you really put it to the test, it's hard to say. So I'm really excited to compare this bin to the urban worm bag, see how the worms get along in here, and just add it to my arsenal of videos I bring to you guys. So please drop your comments below, questions, like this video, subscribe if you want some more content from me, and I want to thank Tom again for sending this to me and allowing me to test this bag out. So you guys have a great night, and I will talk to you soon.